Hello, and thanks for joining us this evening. I want to welcome you guys to Black Landscapes Matter, a series brought to us by Black environmental leaders, where we explore the contributions to BIPOC folks in our area, to the green space, to the environment, and just us in our fullness. Tonight, I'm here with Michael Jett, who has so many titles, and I don't know what hat he's wearing tonight. So I'll let him introduce himself. But tonight we'll be talking about supply chain and BIPOC's role in the supply chain and the impact that supply chain has on the green economy. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Jett.
Hello, my name is Michael Jett, and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, Lincoln Heights, Ohio, to be specific, which is the oldest, first self-black governing town north of the Mason-Dixon line. So we date back to a time period when African Americans had to discover their equity and build it from the ground up, very similar to what we still have to do today. It might sound different, might look different, but we are still on that same challenge of trying to discover how to own and resource with each other. So supply chain, I'll put it like this. Everything has a supply chain to it. The more detailed question is, what type of supply chain do you participate in? Okay, so whether you are a citizen or you have a job, everything that you do and touch, right, as a consumer even, has a supply chain for it to get there. So let's go with grocery retail, right? So as we talk about green, let's focus on local ag, right, and what it means to have a local agriculture. The supply chain would be if you have local broccoli or local greens into your grocery store. The supply chain actually starts at the initiation of a purchase order, okay? And then that next portion of that is at the farm level. And from the seed, also from the farmer having to resource the seed, that's part of the supply chain, all the way to then that seed becomes a finished product and ends up back to the grocery shelf.
Right, and so we know most of the times when we get produce, we'll stick to produce.
Okay.
It may be 45 days old. You know, you think about eating season, avocados do not grow in Ohio,
Yep.
right? And so could you talk about like the impact on green, because it has to be flown, then it has to be driven, then it gets to us. And so we know that there's a lot of initiatives about going local, but could you describe what that process is getting to us as a consumer, and then how much gas, how does that impact the environment?
Absolutely. So thank you for that question too, because it's really great. So let's take an urban farmer, and first, if I can I describe an urban farmer and not an urban garden?
Yes.
Okay. So an urban farmer is for profit and is able to sell by the case being whatever that they're growing. Okay. A urban garden is a community-based generally initiative that has a plot of land that people in the community can resource together and grow different things, but it is not necessarily for mass profit, even if they're selling in small profit. Both are still good, right? It's just distinguishing that out. So I said that to say I want to focus on urban farmers. Okay, so if you think about, let's go greens. Once again, even if I'm having to get greens in Ohio from Alabama, right? So let's think about what that actually does when it comes towards the cost for the logistics, right? So that logistics cost is getting passed on to who? No matter whether you're getting it from a retailer or anyone. If you have additional costs on your supply chain, the consumer is going to therefore pay for that. So the more that you can actually lessen your supply chain costs, the better, which is going local does that. What it also does is allow shared added value directly with the participation, because now you can get those greens and you can have it in that local grocery store fairly quickly. It's a time saver, and plus the consumer can trust it more or have more of a shared relationship because it came from a community that maybe someone in their family even works in. So now you're looking at how going green actually uplifts the community by the consumer shopping there, because it's getting passed back on to that same community.
So that's great. So for all the folks who are listening, when you get your greens all the way from Alabama, you are paying the cost for gas. When we think about, everybody's like, groceries are so high right now. But a lot has to do with that, the logistic cost.
Absolutely.
So could you speak a lot more about the logistic cost and what that really means for the purchaser and what that means for the grocer?
Oh, absolutely, I really can. So, especially when it comes to produce, logistics can get quite funny. So when you think about the fact that with produce, it's not always guaranteed, because let's say if you have blueberries can frost overnight, and now your sourcing plan looks completely different, right? If you have two local blueberry farmers, you might have a better shot at just, subsidizing one farmer to the other directly with that. But limiting that direct cost and that engagement is super beneficial, not only for a buyer, but for honestly that farmer. So enable for that farmer to be able to judge how much they're going to be charging for freight. It's hard to do that if it's going to be intrastate, right? So if it's going to be intra, you can kind of you know what that bill on lading is going to be able to look like, right? You're going to know what your FOB costs are. You can either guarantee your cost when you're making that purchase order, when you're telling the buyer, this is how much it's going to cost for me to sell this to you. You can either include your freight cost, which allows both the buyer and the farmer, I'll say vendor, to be able to better negotiate. But if you can't judge that because you don't know what the different logistics are going to be because of the price of gas all the way from California to Ohio, what is that exchange? What are the different fees associated with that? And then you're thinking about the refrigeration process. We get further and further away. Now it's good to have a wide reach so that we always do have commodities readily available to us, but the more that we can focus on going local, the better it is for not only the economy, but honestly the ecosystem.
Right. The other thing I really want to get into is global trade. A lot of times when we think about farmers or just consumer goods at all, we think about, when you get something that says made in China, or, grown in Guatemala. What does it really mean for, us or people who are making products in America to have those options to trade on a global scale? We know that, we might not have tons of things, but we may be at the mid-size level. What does it look like for BIPOC folks in particular to start to participate in that global market?
Absolutely. So can I ask a question with that? Do we want to talk import or export?
I think we can talk about a little bit of both.
Okay.
Explain to people the difference.
Okay. All right, that's perfect. So import versus export. If I'm an American supplier and let's say I have a hot sauce that's really good, and I want to sell that to another country, that means I'm going to be exporting that product. Okay, so that means that the buyer, I have a foreign buyer who is then that I'm going to have tariff rates for, so the taxes on those goods coming to there and having to negotiate that with them. But the benefit is for even programs like that, you have the SBA, Small Business Administration, that has programs like STEP, which is capital STEP, that really assist you with that export line of business through certain banking networks like Exim Bank, which is for really export. And then you have import. Let's take Africa as a prime example. Okay, absolutely, right? We love Africa, especially Ghana. Okay. Now, looking at being able to import, let's say if I have an African farmer that has, let's say oranges, grapes, anything. If I am an American retailer or American manufacturer, because oftentimes I also want to make this point, when you are a brand owner, whether you have a consumer packaged good, if you're the manufacturer of your own, if you're a manufacturer of that consumer packaged good, don't always just think about retail. think about the additional options for the fact that, let's say if it is a raw material, if you are selling grapes, oranges, or whatever that commodity is, don't think about your buyer always being a retail buyer. Think about how many manufacturing facilities actually need that raw material to go into some of your favorite canned goods, baked goods, or additional products that are further prepared.
I think that's so important because I think when a lot of us get into this market, we think about getting into retail, getting into big box, getting into Walmart, having your product on Amazon. But from what you're saying, there's so many other opportunities in supply chain that just not just having your grapes on the shelf, but maybe your grapes show up in Welch's. Right? Can you talk about the relationship with some of those big manufacturers and what their process is sourcing some of those materials to make their final product?
Absolutely. Well, most of them go through distributors. Okay, so most sourcing is not done direct with a global entity or even an enterprise-sized company, right? If that buyer is not calling the direct farmer and talking to that farmer about their good, it goes through certain broker channels and distribution channels. And what that does is that allows the regulatory, the compliance, and also just better trading standards. Because imagine if you are a farmer and you're selling to an enterprise-sized company, you don't understand, or even if you understand the deductions, there's so many different layers on that purchase order contract that have to be satisfied. It will be overbearing for you directly to be able to do that. So the first step is to, one, resourcing your broker. Okay, so I would say resourcing your broker. So who can sell your commodity, good or consumer packaged good item to your most ideal end user. So it's also identifying your end user. It's also making sure you have a consultant. Okay, you should have a consultant in some capacity. Your retail broker or your manufacturer broker, that is not also that general consultant. Your consultant is that person that's really working with you and your executive leadership team on the journey to the market. Your broker is helping execute and bring awareness to your product to buyers and stakeholders. But I would say that those are the first two main primary portions before you can know where you're going in the market.
I think these things are so important when we're talking about this new green economy.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time talking about produce, but I want to make it clear when we're looking at, hemp-based products, when we're looking at, new green items, whether it's filters, this is still the process of supply chain. Mm-hmm. And so this new green market, whether it's going EV, like I said, whether it's going more natural-based, I think that it's so important for us to really participate in the green economy, for us not to be left behind when the government has millions and billions of dollars worth of funding to expand this industry. And as we continue to see the impacts, whether it's in the Congo, from going green, whether we're looking locally within us and thinking about food costs, logistics has a lot to do why our food costs is what they are. And so when I think about going green, we know that's reducing emissions, that is, going EV, but to what cost and to what end. And so one of the things that I think is very important is that entrepreneurs start to educate themselves on the opportunities of this. Mm-hmm. And one person that's doing a lot of work around that is Jett. So I want you to talk about Yack Shack, the purpose of Yack Shack, and what you're doing to help more BIPOC folks get into the supply chain.
Absolutely. So Yack Shack focuses on retail readiness, taking individuals and organizations from ideation all the way to the end user customer. So not necessarily from ideation to on the shelf, because once again, retail is not the only option for equity. Okay, so what that means is we work with policy drivers and corporate stakeholders to ideate retail programs and also educate the market, both the ecosystem market and suppliers, on retail standards and how to come into the market. So we have that from the strategy standpoint, where we roadmap you to be able to know from your bottlenecks and roadblocks from where you currently are to your end goals at the campaign awareness with the execution. partners